Hi, this is Ed Gonfandini. I know I've talked about dados and setting them up in a different video, but today I'm actually going to do a demonstration on the saw of how this technique can work and how it's going to be a great time saver for you. And I'm working with a Freud dado set, which is a beautiful set. They come with a number of chippers, and all the different blades are code lettered, and you can have them engraved or use a marker to make sure that that's what they read. And then they give you a chart. So let's say, for instance, what project I'm going to do right now is I'm going to run a dado and some drawer slides, and I use a 1/2-inch drawer bottom, nominal, okay, which means close, but the manufacturers are never exact and depending on whether it's metric or what it is. So the best thing to do is when you're working with plywoods is measure what you've got and then work accordingly. That way you can save all your time of trial and error. You haven't got to set the dado up 3 or 4 or 5 times to trial and error to get it right. I'll give you an example. So here's our material that we're going to use for the bottom, and it's a pre-finished on one side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my calipers, the dial calipers, which I explained before, and you grip them snugly, not too tight, lock it, slide it off, and this reads 480 thousandths, and that's about 20 thousandths less than a 1/2 inch. Okay, so the smart way to do this is if you take and just set your dado up for a 1/2 inch even, you're going to be sloppy. Okay, so what we're going to do then is we go to our chart on the Freud thing and we go 1/32 under a 1/2 inch, and that is 15/32. Now, if you ever don't, you can memorize your decimal equivalents, but if you don't have them memorized yet, anytime you have a question, it's easy to figure. You just go over here, you take your numerator, which is 15, divided by your denominator, which is the 30 seconds, equals 0.468. That's your decimal equivalent. Now, if you have this memorized, now, myself, I go down to 16ths. I don't have the entire table memorized, but I have the majority of them memorized. You know, like if I need 15/16ths, I know that's 0.9375 with the tenth. But anyway, what I'm getting to is, so now we've got this number. So what we're going to do is then we put that on store with our calculator, set it aside, and then we go to a 1/2 inch, okay? And we've got, or actually we're going to go to, correct that, we're going to go to 480.48, which is what the plywood measures. Now we're going to subtract what we recalled, which is the 0.468, equals 11 thousandths, okay, and 2/10, but like I said, we don't go that far. So 11 thousandths. So now with the Freud set, with the chippers they give you, I'm going to switch the camera down here so you can kind of see more of what I'm doing rather than me. And I'll show you. So the Freud set comes with an outer blade, the chippers, and then an end blade. And then they also give you these individual stamped sheet metal discs. And these, I used whiteout so you can read them. But what they measure. So what I did for the pile was I got 10 thousandths and 1 thousandths. So that's obviously 11 thousandths. So I'm going to add that to that 0.468, and then I'll show you how that turns out. And I'll break down the saw for you. Now, one important thing that I always do is I have a cutoff switch which kills the power to my machines when I'm doing setup. And if you don't have something like that, just flip the breaker, you know, because it's worth doing just to be safe. And then I use these rubber gloves here. These are handy for a number of reasons. They grip the smooth surfaces of the slippery materials. But then also what I do here is I can take down the saw. I use a block of wood and then you take your nut. And also too, if you ever drop your nut or washer down in the sawdust, what's good to do is have some automotive mechanics on hand, or magnets on hand. Like say, I have this huge one here, which I can just reach down in the sawdust and get whatever I lost down. And then I have this other small one here, which is handy for the discs because sometimes you can't quite pick them up. This helps out a lot. So we take off our standard blade, set that aside, get our left-hand side cutter, make sure our teeth are pointing the right way. And then we put on our D and our E, which is what the letters in the chart calls for, a D and an E. It's a beautiful system they devised. And now, before you put the last one on, the outer one, you put these two pieces on here. And like I say, this magnet is handy for getting them started and pulling them off. And then put that baby on. Make sure the teeth are not interfering with each other. Then you get in here, put your nut on. Now, a neat way to tighten these down, put your wrench on there, then take this with your gloved hand and pull it towards you. And that will be more than enough to make it nice and snug. And we just get all the rest of the stuff out of the way. Put our raggedy old dado plate in there, which I haven't had time to make a new one. Okay. I actually interrupted some other work to do this. That's why there's a clutter around. So anyway, now what I've got is the right thickness on there, I believe. And then what I did was, this material here is handy to have, this composite material, because it's real close to, very close to 3/4 of an inch, and it machines very nicely. It's great for jigs and fixtures, and I had some scrap. So what I did was, previously, I made a precise depth thing, cut using my calipers, set for 3/8 because I wanted a 3/8 feet. So I did that, plus this also I got my spacing away from it. And we always have a sacrificial fence on here. That way, if you're doing rabbits, you can go under and you don't damage your nice fence. So a quick way to do that, I know that is right there. I have my depth already set. Drop that on there. You can feel that just right, just snug. Make sure the cam lock doesn't interfere with it. Your table is nice and waxed. Safety glasses. Power back on. And then these are my pieces that I'm going to be doing for the drawers. And I always use these, which are very nice, because what happens is if you ever slip, anything happens, this gets chewed up, not your hands. Remember that. And this is our drawer bottom material. Okay, so here's the results. Of doing that. Now look at that. It's loose enough so that can drop in, but it's not sloppy. It doesn't rattle, so that when you're putting this thing together and you're using it in the kitchen, it's nice and snug. It's not rattling, and it fits like a glove. And the beauty of it is, see, you only had to do one setup. And if you do this kind of thing repetitively, what you can do is you can write down all your intermixing combinations on a chart, and if you use the same consistent materials, then you'll be ending up with the same results. So in any event, hopefully this better clarifies it, but I use dados for my cabinet sides and my drawers, and I try to get them precise because it makes a big difference in the overall quality of your cabinetry when you're finished. Thank you. And if you enjoy the series, check out my other videos and then subscribe, because eventually I'd like to have a collection that goes to the entire process. Thank you.